We're going to wait a few more minutes so that everyone has some time, you know, 5 right now. I'm going to start in about 2 minutes. Okay, I think we're going to start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to hear this consortium webinar on integrating citizenship education classes into the naturalization program. We're going to have this webinar today, and then again on Thursday, September 27th, from noon to 2 p.m. So tell your colleagues if they're missing this webinar, there's another chance to hear this again. My name is Leah Chen. I am a program at the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. And with me is Jordan Steiner. Jordan?
Hi, I'm Jordan Steiner. I'm Immigration Program Coordinator at the International Rescue Committee in New York City.
So before we begin, I just want to mention that most of this presentation is based on the IRC and HISIS experience working on the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Citizenship and Integration National Capacity Building Grant Program. The HISIS and the IRC are the two of the three organizations that received the grant 2 years in a row. So for FY 2010 and for FY 2011. The grant is designed to promote immigration civic integration, lawful permanent residence, LPRs, for citizenship. So we actually work with several sub-grantees nationwide to build the capacity to implement a comprehensive citizenship education and naturalization application program. So we designed a framework that was adapted by the sub-grantees to fit their specific needs and capacities. So, you know, we just want to let you know that most of this presentation consists of the lesson learned and the promising practices that we collected over the past 2 years. So before I continue, I want to say that if you have any questions at any point during this webinar, please just hit the raise your hand icon on your webinar screen and then write your question in the box that's available, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Okay? All right. All right, so the agenda for this webinar is, you know, I will talk about the needs assessment that should be conducted before, you know, you start any program. I will talk about staff recruitment and retention, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jordan, who will talk about assessments, you know, students, the levels, and referrals that need to be made. She'll also discuss the evaluation of classes and student retention. She will discuss dealing with multi-level classes and the special populations that you might encounter, such as older applicants. And she will discuss the development of curriculum and, you know, the different levels that the IRC has in their program. And then I will talk about the use of existing curriculum and the level that we work with, which is the low literacy, low education level classes. And then we will bring together our promising practices for outreach, recruitment, training, and use of volunteers and interns. And then finally, we'll discuss program sustainability and funding. Again, I want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, just raise your hand, type in the questions, and then we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Thank you. Needs assessment. So I'm going to talk about the why. The why.
Lear, your nothing is changing.
I am glad you told me this. Hold on. I see audience view. Do you see it now?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Let me go back one slide just so that you can see the agenda. Okay. Give you guys a moment to see it. Thank you, Jordan, for letting me know.
Sure.
Okay. So needs assessment. I'm going to discuss the why, the what, and the how of needs assessment. Beginning with the why. I mean, your resources are limited, and perhaps you're wondering why do a needs assessment. Well, needs assessments are extremely important. It's about collecting the information that you need to help you with the program design and the planning. It helps to establish short-term, intermediate, long-term goals, including qualitative and quantitative measures, such as how many students you want to serve at certain at different points in your program. It's also about helping you outline the implementation and evaluation activities, and developing plans for program sustainability. So we really advocate for looking at program sustainability from the very beginning, even at the research level. So what is included in needs assessment? What type of specific information do we want to find? So basically, one is you want to construct a profile of the target community. So in our case, it's the legal permanent residents, or lawful, sorry, permanent residents. And so we want to know about, the countries that they're from, education level, the age of your of the community, of the population, and identify some of the obstacles that they have to citizenship. Is it transportation? Is it the lack of child care? And also, what their readiness for citizenship. And then this is also a great point to start thinking about effective outreach. When thinking, when talking to your the target population, find out what will be the some of the ways that will be most effective to reach out to them. So second thing to look at is your organization. What kind of organizational, programmatic, and administrative needs that your organization have, and potential. What are some of the things that are already available, the type of resources that are already available internally that you can access. Finally, it's looking at the service area, the local environment, the different ethnic communities, where they live, where they shop, availability of public transportation in this area. It's also identifying community stakeholders and possible partners in your service delivery. And it's also looking at what other classes are available already. Are there citizenship classes already available, BIA accredited organizations around? What are the gaps in the available services? So how do you conduct a needs assessment? First of all, some of the methods of conducting a needs assessment include, surveys, questionnaires to the community or to other service providers, interviewing stakeholders, federal, state, local government, other service providers, some maybe community-based organizations in your area, faith-based organizations like churches, ethnic-based community organizations, businesses in the area. And finally, it's internet research, looking at the U.S. Census information, finding out the availability of citizenship classes through just a search on the internet. All right. So what kind of, so there's basically 3 parts to needs assessment. It's collecting that information. It's analyzing the information so that you can make informed and appropriate decisions about the program. And then finally creating that plan so that you have, the activities that you want to have in place to implement the program. Okay. I'm going to go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about staff recruitment and retention. So some of the things that you might want to consider in terms of staffing is, again, going back to the needs assessment, you should consider your organizational needs. Perhaps your organization has a former citizen instructor that you work with. You might want to bring that person back. You might have ESL volunteers already working for your organization. You'd be able to exist with this current program. You want to consider the funding that's available and, your budget, the budget needed for the position. So maybe you might have to seek outside resources. And if there's not enough funding, you might consider having a volunteer instructor. Now, for citizenship education, for a citizen instructor, ideally it should be somebody who has already taught and understands the focus, and who can teach to adults from different ethnic and educational backgrounds and ESL levels. So look for somebody who feels comfortable adapting different instructional materials to fit the students' needs and different styles of learning. As you know, adults and children learn differently, and also people from have different learning culture. It's also something that requires some administrative skills. You should be somebody should be able to track student attendance and progress. There's file management that needs to be done, and follow up, calling them to find out whether they need naturalization application assistance, how they did on the naturalization test. It's also like, we're all small organizations or even large, but we're all nonprofit. A lot of us are nonprofit. And so, a lot of staff need to be flexible and wear different hats. So it should be somebody who's willing to participate in comprehensive training on all elements of the citizenship program. So even the naturalization portion of it, we really encourage you to look for somebody who's willing to be trained in that area. But most importantly, we think that it should be somebody who has the ability to motivate and support students and be able to communicate cross-culturally and committed to the mission of helping eligible LPRs become U.S. citizens. So I talked about training needs. Perhaps they might even want to be BIA accredited. So, this is actually related to staff retention. When you have available trainings, different types of trainings, room for professional growth, it really helps to retain that staff. And of course, you should, show appreciation. It's oftentimes a lot of work, and it's very, very helpful to know that that their work is appreciated and that that their work has value in the community. So going back to the training needs, it really is also about the growth of the position and the program. It's the position through training, availability of professional development opportunities, the staff will, be able to maybe move into different different positions in the organization. So having that, like thinking about those things already, and thinking about also available funding and resources. So sustainability from the very beginning to help extend the program or to continue the program is also a part of staff retention, because you've built that capacity. You don't want to lose it. Okay, I am going at this point to turn it over to Jordan.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Lear. I'm going to continue the PowerPoint, and again, my name is Jordan Steiner from the IRC, headquarters in New York City. Okay, first I'm going to talk about assessment, talking about student levels and needs for referrals if necessary. As Lear has pointed out, I mean, this is an example of framework. I'm specifically going to be talking about meeting the needs of high beginner and intermediate levels. So this, might not apply to everybody, but just kind of a framework of how you could assess students based on your specific needs. So the assessment that we're focused on right now is to retain students for high beginning and intermediate levels. High beginning being loosely defined as introducing beginning ESL learners to civics and citizenship concepts, but really reinforcing English language skills with citizenship education. And then intermediate is preparing a higher level of learners to the naturalization and citizenship exam, but of course reinforcing English language skills. And so for many of our subgrantee sites, we encourage if clients, students who come in for assessments cannot really meet the requirements for the levels, you should do the research and find other organizations where they would be able to benefit more. They should be referred out to these other classes if they display lower oral proficiency skills and no or little literacy skills. Lear is going to talk more about meeting the needs of low literacy, but here we're at kind of high beginning and intermediate. So, for example, the IRC in our kind of assessment framework is looking at we're working off of best practices within the ESL and citizenship field, and due to limited resources, we weren't really able to bring in an external assessment of Best Plus, but the framework of the assessment is based off of Best Plus adult ESL oral assessments within the National Reporting System NRS standards. So our high beginning level is looking at Best Plus oral proficiency score about 3 and lower intermediate citizenship level of 4 to 5 with a level of literacy. So again, ideas for a pre-assessment, within the classes we encourage having a pre and post assessment, so you can really assess the learning, the knowledge gained over the course of however many weeks. We suggest 10 to 12. Every organization does it differently, but really to assess the learning gained over the course of the citizenship and ESL classes. So, for high beginning placement, we are suggesting that students must provide logical answers to about 50% of the questions, and at the intermediate level they will have provided quote-unquote logical answers for all of the questions. Here again we're really trying to standardize an assessment, but based on the local needs. I mean, some of the influence of assessment is going to be subjective at some level, so it'll really be based on you to assess scoring and to be really working with the language levels of the clients that you're serving. So for reading and writing, simple questions such as assessing the date, their name, the phone number, and having them read aloud questions to assess their reading, and also providing written answers to assess their writing ability. We also suggest having a dictation portion, which is also used, within the citizenship test. And again, for high beginning, you would be seeing some spelling or punctuation or capitalization errors, and some mistakes may interfere with meeting, but general understanding. And for intermediate, really few mistakes should interfere with the meeting, and really students or clients providing a general sense of the structure of the dictation with occasional spelling, capitalization errors, etc. So examples being, people come here to be free, the president lives in the White House. There are a number of different vocabulary from the reading and writing vocabulary that one could put together for using for examples for dictation. For assessing listening and speaking, similar to before, we suggest that students provide logical answers to about 50% of the questions, and intermediate is at a higher level of completion, so that they're hearing these questions and answering the questions orally and correctly. What is your name? Where are you from? Where do you live? And just here's some example questions. And also to assess the citizenship knowledge or the naturalization knowledge that they might already know, and as you would have a post-assessment with citizenship questions and questions that pertain to the test, we suggest having a portion of the pre-assessment devoted to questions related to citizenship to assess the learning gained. And some examples, why does the flag have 50 stars? When do we celebrate Independence Day? Again, some example questions, but there are a number of different questions, obviously, that you could use. So for the post-assessment, like I said, it's used with the pretest to assess learning, the knowledge gained, and you would have components of the post-assessment that focus on the N400 application, an oral civics portion similar to the pretest portion, a reading and writing portion, and depending on how you're putting together your curriculum and your program, possible also ESL or English learning topics to assess English skills gained. So now I'm actually going to move to evaluating classes. We've seen that it's very important to there's a definitely an important part of the program in terms of monitoring and evaluation of student and client satisfaction, and in terms of the civics or citizenship education portion of monitoring and evaluation. It's really important in terms of just improving the program to really meet the needs of the students. And what we've been doing, and it's been working pretty well, is both having a written and oral evaluation. And so some questions that I'll go on to in the next slide that you can have the students write their answers, but as some students might not have very high writing skills, also having somebody kind of do an oral evaluation, asking them similar questions in front of the class to capture their satisfaction with the class. We've suggested that instead of having the instructor or the teacher ask questions related to satisfaction of the class, that either a volunteer or other staff member, maybe the immigration staff, but we really highly suggest even somebody quote-unquote less biased than this, such as a volunteer, to conduct an evaluation, as we really encourage a robust volunteer program. This would just help limit the bias of the evaluations. So although I'm not providing specific questions, what we focused on in our evaluation of classes is really asking why the students why are they taking this class, how the class can be improved, what was helpful about the class, and also asking if they're in the process or have applied for citizenship. A lot of these evaluations can help in both quantitative and qualitative information. I'm going to move now to student retention, and we're speaking about this just as it's constantly an issue, how to make sure students especially in adult education, stay in the class? What are some best practices in terms of kind of keeping the students engaged and to kind of care about the subject they're focused on here? So these ideas are completely from our subgrantees and some best practices that they've shared with us at headquarters. So for example, one of our sites, they provide, they have a good relationship with their community relations officer at USCIS and are able to stay on top of a lot of like USCIS citizenship resources, and so they're able to provide the quick civics lessons, learn about the United States quick civics lessons for the students at the end of the session, but the students are not able to really take those home, etc., until they finish the session. So it's a way to kind of keep the students engaged in the class. Just constant reminders and instruction about the benefits of citizenship, really having an understanding yourself as an instructor, a program administrator, on how to relay that to the students. And also we found just a real strong collaboration between the immigration and civics education, the instructors within the civics education programming. This has just been really vital. So in our programs, immigration representatives or coordinators or specialists, whatever you're calling them, are really working in coordination, answering questions of the students, coming to the classes, and there's just constant referrals between the two, and for the student to really gain a full understanding of why they're in this class, the importance of naturalization, and that really it's a step in the direction of submitting the N-400 application. The next point I'm going to talk about is multi-level issues, I guess, in the classes. And although I'm discussing, specific levels such as high beginning or intermediate, and Lear's going to be talking about lower literacy focus. As much as programs might try to divide students into levels, you're really bound to have multi-levels within specific levels, of course, because of just cultural and ethnic and linguistic and educational backgrounds. There's always going to be some diversity in level within all of the classes. So just a point to really be aware of this, and in instructional and the development of the curriculum and instruction methods, really to be focusing on different types of learning, whole group learning and small group and pairs and individualized learning to really meet the needs of all students. And we'll talk about this more fully later, but it's just been, I think, for both of our programs, completely vital for success in many of our programs to have volunteers in the classroom working with students who are potentially at different levels, in groups, in pairs, individually. Volunteers can be used in different ways, but really to address the multi-level needs of students, this has been a really important part of kind of helping with that. I'm now going to talk briefly about two ideas or suggestions in terms of target populations within the citizenship or naturalization clients. So for the capacity building grants at the IRC, the focus on older applicants wasn't necessarily a focus within the capacity building subgrantees, but we've had other sites within the IRC that have focused on older applicants who are direct recipients of USCIS funding. And there's also many resources from USCIS itself on focusing on older applicants for the N-400 application. But just, that common issues with older applicants are often illiteracy in native language barriers, isolation, and really if you're targeting this population, considering, when you're setting up the classes, the time of day, the frequency of the classes, logistical considerations, and support services that might be helpful to older applicants, and just some ideas for instruction that comes from this specific office in the IRC who's targeting this population. and that maybe other forms of instruction such as one-on-one tutoring are really focusing on the citizenship application and preparation closer to the interview. So just some ideas or thoughts about targeting that specific population. The second one I'm going to talk about is those clients who might fit into the category of the language exception category. And this comes from one of our subgrantees in Miami, offering programs in Spanish and working on some programs in Haitian Creole for those clients, those students who fit certain exceptions, such as the 50-20 exception, which is if you're age 50 or older at the time of filing for naturalization and you have lived as a permanent resident for 20 years, or you're 55 or older and have been a permanent resident for 15 years, and you don't you really don't have the English to conduct a valid examination in English, you can be exempt from the English language requirement, but still must take the civics test but you can take it in your native language. So, although the client has to take an interpreter to the interview, and the interpreter must be fluent in English and the other language, there's been curriculum and resources developed by our subgrantees to actually prepare these populations for that civics test in the native language. And if you can serve the needs of your community, if there are dominant languages such as Spanish, such as Haitian Creole, if that applies, or whatever is relevant to your local need, it's just potentially a consideration of even developing specialized classes to meet the needs of this population. So now I'm going to move on to talking about curriculum and some ideas of what to include in curriculums. I'm going to be talking about development of new curriculum and ideas to incorporate into a higher beginning or low intermediate level, and then later on Lear will talk about using existing curriculum and lower literacy, lower English levels. So here at the IRC, we kind of provided a framework for high beginning and lower intermediate curriculum to meet the particular needs of the target population that we said that we would meet for the USCIS capacity building grant. We focused on developing institutional capacity, and at the same time we really incorporate so many other materials in terms of like USCIS materials. Our lower intermediate curriculum is completely based on using all of the incredible materials that they really have out there for citizenship education, and also really encouraging teachers to develop resources on their own that fit into the curriculum. Because they're the experts, they're the ones who know how to really meet the needs of the students. And from this, there's just been a ton of materials that have been created by teachers themselves that fit into the kind of the framework of our curriculum. So again, we incorporate a lot of USCIS materials, other supplementary materials, some focus to help with English language improvement and teacher-created materials. So just very briefly, for the high beginning curriculum, we've moved in the direction of the high beginning curriculum focusing heavily on citizenship education, but realizing that some students need assistance still with ESL, with English language learning, and so we encourage a focus on interpersonal communication, focusing on introductions, polite expressions, as this can be very vital during the interview in the N400 interview with the USCIS officer. Family members, looking at the who, what, when, where, how, why, interrogatives, money, taxes, calendar, holidays, really helping create like a kind of more full civic understanding along with citizenship education. For the low intermediate curriculum, this is focusing on preparing these intermediate learners for the naturalization exam and reinforcing these English language skills using different methods such as reading, writing, role-playing, watching videos provided by USCIS and other resources, and focusing on verbal exercises. So here's just some examples of the materials that we suggest and that that is used throughout the curriculums, from the actual N400 application to just different videos. Like I've said before, the Learn About the United States Quick Civics Lessons for the Naturalization Test is a pretty vital resource for any of these curriculums. Citizens Almanac, the Reading and Writing Vocabulary, the flashcards, and there. All of this is both in USCIS toolkits that has citizenship education resources and online. And if people don't know where that is, we're happy to send that website at a later point. So again, a suggestion, potential framework for things to focus on, for themes to focus on within a lower intermediate curriculum. At the IRC, we've suggested a 10 to 12-week course with, for example, meeting 2 times per week at 2 hours a session. Again, an example, things will change based on your resources, based on your time, based on the framework of your program, with themes such as, learning the eligibility requirements for the naturalization interview, identifying spelling, reading, and pronouncing USCIS vocabulary, practicing naturalization interviews, and really having a holistic understanding of U.S. history and civics questions. So, from the beginning, like I said, I've outlined many of the materials used, and there should be potentially a focus on just understanding of the eligibility requirements and other just logistical considerations such as making sure they understand the fingerprints, forms, fees, etc. Within the content of the curriculum, of course, there's a focus on U.S. history, civics, and these are examples of the themes that are within the civics questions: early America, U.S. Constitution, 1800s, recent American history, American Indians, principles of democracy, system of government, rights and responsibility, and it's very important to look at the reading and writing portion of the exam as well. So, through all those subsets that I just mentioned, one suggestion is we have a suggestion of having a warm-up presentation portion, practice of pronunciation, reading portion, discussion, reading and writing test practice, and listening vocabulary and dictation, really covering all 100 questions in a very holistic manner with supplemental readings from USCIS, and bringing in other resources as necessary. So again, warm up, relating a particular topic within U.S. history, civics to students' life and background with questions for discussion. This just helps relate the topic to students' lives. Focusing, of course, on presentation, focusing on particular questions that correspond with the 100 civics questions, making sure students practice pronunciation of vocabulary and repeating questions aloud. Some suggestions for reading practice is, like I've said, the Learn About the United States Quick Civics Lessons is just an incredible resource for going through the questions, and the Citizens Almanac is a great supplemental resource as well. Having students circling vocabulary words that are unfamiliar to them, suggesting that they have a dictionary to really understand unfamiliar words, and again, there are so many different USCIS resources and suggestions of lesson plans that that utilize these resources and that can focus on reading. Also, just to make sure students have a fully holistic understanding of what they're studying, just testing comprehension, asking students questions from the section and citing more information, really making sure they're understanding instead of just completely memorizing questions, what the meaning is behind what they're looking at. Utilizing the flashcards that USCIS provides both online and in toolkits, so students can have flashcards and quiz their partners, using a vocabulary word and then writing the definition of the vocabulary word and exchanging with their partner, and just students monitoring any partner work that's being done. This can also be done with instructor and student themselves, but utilizing the flashcards for reading and writing test practice is a great idea. As mentioned before, really making sure dictation, as that's a part of the exam as well, of course, is constant practice with dictation, having students write dictation, writing the dictated questions on the board and correcting together as a class is also a great way to have students involved, and students can be proud of what they're producing. And then, at the conclusion, making sure that students, are not stressed about the exam they're going to be taking, and you can, based on your local situation, going through with the student on how to access public transportation and how to kind of figure out their travel plans to the interview, and what are the logistics of entering the building in your specific local area, and and what happens after the interview. Just really going through all the different steps so that students are not only ready with content but are really ready logistically and to diminish any stress that they would have before the test. So now I'm going to hand it back to Lear for looking at using existing curriculum and lower literacy levels.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. As Jordan said, I'm going to talk about existing curriculum. At HIAS, we, focused on the low literacy, low education, the low literacy, low education. That's because that was the group of people that, just came to our sub-grantees. So this level is basically, LPRs with basic reading and writing skills in their own language, and also limited education. As such, the instruction must include civics-focused ESL and to improve their listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills, to ensure that the LPR students are able to acquire the civics knowledge to pass the naturalization interview and test. So, what I talked about. The primary textbook for the class, Weintraub's passed the U.S. Citizenship exam. It's a 3-book series. It was selected and discussion with professionals in the field. We really think that this is, really the right book for this level. We tested it out in, at 3 sites, and they all came back with the same conclusion that this is, really a great book. It's interactive. There's a lot of learner-centered activities. So the book consists, as I said, of 3 books. The first is on civics and literacy. The second is helping students to get ready for the interview. And finally, the last book is literacy skills. The book, or the books rather, provides civics education in an ESL setting, and through audio-visual exercises and illustrations to explain key concepts and terms in U.S. history and government. HIAS really, recommends the book be used in, of perhaps 36 hours of classroom instruction. So maybe 2 classes at 3 hours per week, per class, or 3 classes at 2 hours per class. And we find that small classes are best for this level. So, at most about 12 to 15 students per class. So going back to the book, so the main curriculum, as I said, is citizenship, pass the U.S. citizenship exam, and it actually comes. It has the 3 books for the students, but it also comes with a teacher's guide and an audio CD. And the book itself contains level reading and simple wording, illustrations and read-along audio to support comprehension, a lot of reinforcement exercises, and test-taking skills, meaning, how to, ask the USCIS officer to clarify a sentence or to speak more slowly or repeat something. So, these are all vital things for the exam. Each lesson in the book contains a review of previous material, introduction to the topic, vocabulary and prior knowledge, some new information, as well as introduction of the naturalization test questions, so that it helps with identifying the key listening vocabulary, and then coaching the students to respond to the questions that are asked at the interview. And then there's also question and answer drills, and by the end of the lesson, the aim is to ensure that the students understand the concepts, they recognize and remember the answers, and the correct pronunciation. So the Ready for the Interview book, it covers the current content of the naturalization test and includes the following features. There's vocabulary that's related to the naturalization application, examples of oral interview questions, some models of appropriate responses, and then, just a lot of practice exercises with your own personal information. There's illustrations throughout the book to help the students understand what's going on. So there are some oral communication strategies. Besides this main curriculum, we also recommend some supplemental textbooks and materials. Yes, by Rana Maggie. It's really recommended for a higher level, maybe advanced, standard to advanced students. It contains a lot of different information that are more in depth and really fully explains key concepts. There's a lot of different reading exercises. So this is really only for students who are more advanced and wants to understand the entire process of the different governments and all the different topics that are covered in the U.S. citizenship, U.S. naturalization interview and test. And as Jordan mentioned, and so I'm not going to go into it much, but USCIS materials are vital. There's just really amazing stuff on their Citizenship Resource Center website, and like Jordan said, we can provide that website to you if you don't have it already. Also, highest on our own, we have taken some of USCIS's materials and translated that stuff into different languages. So the U.S. the preparing for the U.S. naturalization interview CD and workbook, we've actually has taken the it's just a CD video of it. It's a 16-minute video that USCIS produced, and what Highest has done is provided subtitles in different languages, including Arabic, Russian, Chinese, and made all of them available on our website. So you can go to www.hias.org to view the videos also, we've taken the 100 civics questions and translated them into different languages. And this is really based on the needs of our that we've encountered from our students. A lot of them, like I said, are low literacy, low education, and they need to see for themselves how, the process of from beginning to end of the interview, and to have that visual help aid, and to by translating it, it just helps to increase their confidence. Like they fully understand, they'll fully understand what the process involves, and then learn the language, learn the vocabularies, the pronunciation, to enable them to see. And something that Jordan mentioned is teachers creating their own materials. We really have amazing teachers at our sub-grantee sites. They've created a wealth of material binders of just really interactive activities, group work, a lot of handouts, and even just material visual aids for the classroom, yeah, they're just doing really great work out there. So really encourage your teachers to create their own materials, because they really know what works for their classroom, and what's most helpful to their students. Okay. Again, I want to before I go on, I want to mention that if you have any questions, please feel free to write into the box that is on your. We will answer any questions that you might have available at the end of the webinar. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about outreach. And outreach, again, it's based on the IRC and highest experience working with our sub-grantees for the Citizenship and Integration Program. We really recommend developing and implementing ongoing and focused outreach plan. So from the very beginning, we think that outreach should include information dissemination, and that means requirements of citizenship, knowing the benefits of citizenship, getting that information out there to the people, engaging the community in different ways, either through with volunteers, or getting students into the class, and promoting, of course, your services. So outreach focuses on three different things, basically: the people that you want to get in contact with, the places that will help you with outreach, and of course also where to plan your outreach activities, or implement your outreach, and the materials to help you with all of that. Okay, so in terms of the people, again, your target community should be the refugee and immigrant community, knowing where they are, knowing, what kind of languages they speak, and, translating materials into that language. It's also, working with different community leaders, getting them to help you spread the word, working with the government officials, in different capacities. They can help you get that information that you need to make sure that your outreach is effective, such as, your local USCIS field office. We really, encourage you to work, collaborate with them in some way to facilitate or host a community presentation on naturalization, and that's when you can talk about eligibility requirements, some of the dangers of not being a citizen, and and that comes with citizenship. Okay, some of the places that you should consider conducting your outreach is obviously the media and local media. We find that a lot of immigrants and refugees rely on their local media to get the news, and so when you work closely with the local newspapers, you can really, directly reach that population that you want to serve. Also, other service providers, get a e-blast together and send them information about your classes so that they can, spread the word for you. They can go to their clients and tell them about your programs. So, other CBOs, that's community-based organizations, ethnic-based organizations, faith-based organizations, all of these are, places that you can, put your flyers and your brochures. And so, yeah, I've mentioned some of the materials that you might want to create, but also USCIS actually has a lot of great materials, and that's why it's so vital to work closely with the local office, because they have all that material in their office and they can share that with you. You can also get them, request them online. There's a bunch of in different languages. I've seen the, Vietnamese, Chinese, I think Spanish posters, and, they're very, very helpful. So you don't have to create all the material yourselves. So these are following our, it's basically our hints to effective outreach. Again, a lot of them, I've mentioned some of them already, but I just want to reiterate that you should have clear goals and objectives. So, promote your citizenship class, but also think about the, reputation and visibility of your program. Once you become a trusted provider, you won't need to do much outreach anymore. You'll have just people spreading the word for you. It's about raising awareness and encouraging naturalization among your target population, because this is, it's protection for them. It's, beneficial for them, and it's, about working with your community to help them with the, the type of services that they might need. It's, building relationships with local stakeholders, tapping their knowledge, their content and resources, and their influence. They have a lot of pull, and, by working with them, you're increasing your resources, by a lot. So again, I want to reiterate that you should understand your target population. That's, a lot of information that you get from your needs assessment. And so this is like, know the social norms, the values, the attitudes, and practices of your target population. Appropriate and effective for each group. Know where they live, know where they work and play and assemble, so that you can distribute your flyers, talk to different people, hold different, activities, classes. Knowing where they assemble will be a really good way of knowing, where you can maybe even, should have a class. And I really encourage incorporating your students' input. That means asking them where they think outreach should be, how they think outreach should be conducted, because they are your target population. They know all this, a lot of this information. And what we also find that is that, like, once your students satisfied with the services you provide, they will spread the word for you. They will work for you for free, basically. Look into, just, getting to know what your students think, asking them maybe even in the evaluation where they think outreach would be most effective. And like I said, I believe in developing an outreach plan from the beginning and providing ongoing outreach, so regular, scheduled, and organized activities. But you should always consider how you can make it better. So based on your observations, your lesson learned, and promising practice from your colleagues in the field, I really suggest that you should, look into modifying your outreach model every once in a while so that you can maintain effectiveness. I'm going to turn it over now to Jordan to talk about some other promising practices.
Great, thank you, Lair. So really just summarizing from IRC and HIAS, as Lair has been discussing, some promising practices and suggestions for outreach. for both HIAS and IRC, we focus on tracking the outreach that we do to really assess what's working. So, you know, making sure you're asking those clients and those students how they heard about the program, and tracking that information so that you know, as students are coming to your program because of specific outreach, that is probably working, and you can continue that type of outreach. Of course, using available databases to collect relevant data, such as arrival information, so that you can target, for example, you know, refugees and asylees when they're ready to naturalize. As has been said before, really reaching out to public and private institutions in the community, whether that be you know, community-based organizations or employers. This is just really important for making sure that your program information is out there and targeting populations who might be involved in those institutions. Facilitating presentations by the CROs, the USCIS Community Relations Officers, and really developing a relationship with them. So, for example, having a presentation where the CRO and other USCIS employees discuss naturalization, discuss the process, and then your organization is there, kind of really advertising their services in terms of citizenship preparation, citizenship education. You know, in the same vein, coordinating if you do naturalization workshops, making sure that you're really coordinating those services with citizenship education. So enrolling clients as they come in for naturalization application appointments, whether it's workshops or individual appointments. You're also making sure that you're meeting their needs and enrolling them in classes. So this can be really important in terms of outreach into the for clients on information on classes, on citizenship classes. I think it's been mentioned before, but you know, really developing relationships with elected officials and community leaders. This can be beneficial for a few reasons. One can be a possible source of funding and support, and also a place for referrals. You know, if elected officials and community leaders and their offices know about the programs that you know, that you're offering, they can refer constituents to your programs for citizenship education and applications. Also, you know, for both marketing and outreach, identifying success stories within your program. So as your programs go on and there's successes that you can focus on, and you know, those who go through the naturalization process and become citizens, you know, focusing on success stories, whether that be in media formats or, you know, on your own organization's website if you have one, you know, by highlighting individual stories of what works, that can really draw attention and draw people in. Some of our subgrantees have been able to utilize PSAs, or public service announcements, you know, with different radio stations, and you know, every local office will have different rules and regulations that they might have to deal with in terms of PSAs, but this has been used also as a form of outreach. And as has been mentioned before, just, you know, really using ethnic and mainstream newspapers and local television stations and even magazines to generate stories or features, really incorporating those success stories. You know, some of our offices have used Telemundo, Univision, local cable, which offers in some areas kind of free space. This can be a good place to constantly get the word out there about the programs. And I'll turn it over to Lear.
Thank you. Talk about recruitment, training, and use of volunteers and interns. You know, your organization might have its own policy and procedures on this, but you know, these are just some of our recommendations. And so we, you know, develop these 5 steps for developing a, you know, or having a internship and volunteer program. First of all, you know, going back to that needs assessment again, you know, that's when you can identify areas where interns and volunteers can make a significant contribution. You know, this is when you can like draft a description, the possible positions, outline the specific fees, the qualifications that you require, and the time commitment needed. You know, during this process, you might also want to, you know, just develop some of the materials that, you know, might be needed. Maybe not during the needs assessment, but afterwards, you know, should have screening and application procedure in place so that interns and volunteers are appropriately matched to, you know, the test that they that you want them to perform. You should create, you know, intern and volunteer agreements to clarify the time and the effort that it involves. And the recruitment process, it's best to have a list of possible places where you want to recruit. So such as, you know, we actually really recommend recruit from that community that you're targeting. So maybe some of the you know, students, college or in these who are the community really well, or who are directly from the community, want to help, you know, their community members. You know, like I said, schools are a great place because there's a lot of different programs, such as TESOL programs. There's, you know, a lot of students, maybe even in the legal programs, and you can get them to participate in to provide some of their time to this, you know, particular program. Looking at your civic and community organizations, there's a lot of people already, you know, willing to volunteer there, and so, you know, they might know some other people, and or they, you know, they might have people to suggest to you. Senior citizen centers are also another great place to recruit from. Other social service agencies, libraries, and going online. There's, you know, you can post positions in volunteer match. And find, you know, really good people. We also, you know, during the recruitment process, you should have good recruitment material, flyers and appropriate presentation, you know, community centers or at other service providers, and ads that you can use to, you know, get people interested in the programs that you have. In terms of training, you know, training is very important, and you should assess your training needs first, the type of knowledge and skills that are required for the task, know what the needs and skills of the interns and volunteers themselves are, and, you know, the time and resources you have available for training. So depending on all of that, you can determine the type of training that you might want to have. You can have formal training involving, you know, classes, organized training events. The informal, so on-the-job training, some self-directed activities, or mentoring under a staff member, or even shadowing a staff member, so that you know, the skills help your clients and help. And, you know, of course, you should material. You should have programs, some of your organizational policies, the roles and responsibilities of the interns and volunteers, and some possible uses for for interns and volunteers. You know, can provide administrative to your staff members. You know, they can make photocopies, do student follow-up. You know, they can, you know, with the students who are training to become teachers, on tutoring, they can be, you know, outreach, teaching assistants. So they can be used in the classroom to help with the, you know, the multi-level class that Jordan mentioned, for instance. And they can also help with outreach. In fact, almost all of our all of our sites, sub-grantees have interns, volunteers that do the legwork for them. They go out distributing flyers in different, different restaurants, stores, businesses, in different communities. It really is a tremendous help. And one of the more important things is to request feedback from your volunteers and interns through questionnaires, surveys, evaluations, group discussions, and even interviews about what's working in the citizenship program, what could be improved. I think that should be a huge part of your program from the very beginning. It's not just evaluating the class, but it's also getting interns to provide input and retaining volunteers. As in retaining staff, it's great to show appreciation. Provide them with a thank you card. You cannot, obviously pay for their services. You can show them how much they have, really contributed to the program. It's also, building their confidence through providing that training for them, and diversify and enrich a volunteer or intern's experience by actually rotating them into different available positions according to their interests and skills, so that they can, learn a lot of different things and have, good things to put on their resume. And really these group of people that you're working with can become possible future staff members. So consider hiring them for a permanent position when if that becomes available. Because these are people that their their experience, their capacity, and that you've already worked with, and this is a really good group to draw from. So these are some of highest and the IRC's recommendations for using interns and volunteers. I'm going to talk about finally program sustainability. Like I said, program sustainability should, from the very beginning, should be something that your organization consider from the very beginning, perhaps even at the needs assessment period. That should assess and identify the organization's needs, resources, and develop an effective plan for program sustainability. It's about identifying and using the key resources that you might have to develop a list of prospects. And so that means maybe looking at who has funded what in your local area, which donors have previously funded your organization, and for what type of services. It's also looking at the different sources and producing a short list. So evaluating them and then producing a short list, and cultivating a relationship perhaps with a potential funder if it's appropriate. So know their mission and their programs, the programs that they have funded in the past. Know the requirements for funding. Your proposal should not have any mistakes in it. Should follow the guidelines and meet the required paperwork or documents that that the proposal asks for. And one of the things that's not on this list, but I really recommend, is tracking data from the beginning of the program. Know what might possibly be useful in future proposals and track that data so that you can provide it in the proposal when you are applying. And I can't emphasize this enough, but really seek funding from diverse sources. So not just your federal government, not just the federal government, but looking at like the local and state government, what local funders are available, and foundations. And the thing is that they might, you might not be able to get the entire program funded by one source. You can get different components funded by different funders. So I'm going to turn this over to Jordan.
So very similarly to what Lear said, just some suggestions, resources, program sustainability resources that can be used to assist in looking for funding. So using the resource of the Foundation Center, which really provides a great database of potential grants, and there's members only and access without membership, where you can access a lot of information on continuing the program through possible further funding. An example of a local resource is the Grantsmanship Center in LA, and then also we've come across many different corporate grants, and I think as Laura mentioned, that can help fund specific parts of your program. So Best Buy has a program that's looking at technology components. It might not be able to really fund everything, but it could help in terms of some sustainability for the program. And also looking at collaborative opportunities. One example we have is a program called Project Shine that's being implemented in one of our subgrantee programs that matches certain university students with elderly populations. So there really might be some opportunities out there in terms of volunteers that can really help continue sustainability, just really doing some collaborative work in the community.
Okay, so thank you very much. We actually have some time left, so if you let us know, type in your questions. Yeah. If not, if you come up with some questions later or after the presentation, please feel free to contact Aziza with your questions, and she will pass them along to us.
So Lear, I see some hands up in the box, but I'm not sure if that's from earlier.
That's from earlier.
Okay.
Trying to make sure that that function works, and also that people can hear us.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So if there are any questions, just please put them in the chat box. We'll leave a few minutes for that. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so okay. Like Lear said, definitely email Aziza to field those questions.
And also, we will be holding this webinar again on Thursday, this Thursday, the 27th. So feel free to tell your colleagues, or if you have a question, then give us a call. Call in and let us know. Okay.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye. All right.
The